Okay, we can start. So welcome everybody to the final panels of the Switch on America's conference. You have chosen correctly. Good job. Picked the best panel. I think everyone agree? Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. Best panel. So we're going to start. Today's conversation is a very interesting question. It's, are traditional EA frameworks dead? How AI is changing business and in turn changing EA. So we'll do a quick introductions first. I'm Grant Ecker. I'm the founder of the Chief Architect Network, and maybe we'll just go around. But I'm currently the Chief Architect at Ecolab, and come from a couple of other companies. Brian, would you go next?
Yeah, I can do that. So Brian Chambers, I'm co-founder of the Chief Architect Network, along with Grant. So great stuff there. Hope some of y'all are already with us. And then I am the Chief Architect at Chick-Fil-A restaurants.
Sundar.
I'm the Chief Architect at Corning and had some experience at a couple of other companies like Grant is saying, and also at some Big Four consulting firms doing similar work.
One of these things is not like the others. Christine, why don't you tell us who you are?
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Lovas. I am not just here because we needed a token woman for the panel. I am on I'm from the vendor side. I work for ValueBlue. I'm one of the senior AEs over here. Been in the architecture sales space for about 4 years, so have seen a whole host of frameworks, methodologies, successes, failures, et cetera. So really just here to share, the market perspective at large.
Amazing. So I would like everybody to find this little button that says chat in the upper right corner, because you're going to be using it. Honestly, we're going to answer this question kind of quickly. We can talk for a while, but it's way more fun when we get your engagement, your questions, and we can kind of play around with that. So you've got 3 chief architects and somebody that's seen chief architects deploy architecture across all these different companies. So it's a great chance to say, hey, how does this really work? So please take advantage of that. So Sundar, I will ask you the quick question. Are traditional EA frameworks dead?
I love the way you phrase that. Perfect lead in. So my take on this is that there are some parts of this process that have not changed hardly at all, and some other things that have been affected. So I'm TOGAF certified, as no doubt many of you are, and the cycle is similar. There's business requirements that you gather, you design a solution, you implement it, and then there's a looping process where you come back and say, did the solution meet the needs that we originally started with, and then adjust as you go. Those things still apply through all the changes that we've gone through, but there are some differences. So, for example, the timeframes, let's say, are more compressed today than they've ever been. We have more involvement with business stakeholders than in the past. And we have, we have business stakeholders and non-IT people who are generating part of the solution, especially when you have vibe coding and so on, that makes it possible for product managers or other people to generate code without really doing the coding. That introduces another aspect, and especially that, as opposed to in the past where there may have been documentation requirements, which then led to setting up a Kanban board, now it's more like a working prototype as an expectation, and perhaps in hours, because it is possible to do, and that makes it a lot more tangible for people, I think, to see is this giving them. So that's how I think it's a line of evolution.
I tend to agree with just about everything. Brian, any color to add?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, I think it probably depends. Like, one of the things that you have to do as an enterprise architect is get to know and understand your organization. And I think like frameworks can come with rigidity at times that maybe doesn't work for your situation, or maybe you're at a really mature state where that's exactly what you need to optimize. So I would just add, like, it's splashy to say, yeah, they're dead and there's some new way, but it really probably just depends on what your objectives are. And it's kind of the same as always. It's not an interesting answer, but it's kind of right tool for the right job at the right time, based on what you see in the org. So that's kind of what I would say is it depends. I can say in my world, it's not something that we embrace or adopt. It just doesn't really fit with where we are. But I don't think that means that's true for everybody.
Gotcha. Christine, what are you seeing across industry?
I think it's a great question because exactly to what Sundar and Brian were saying, like it's so contextual and it's so contextual to the organization and even the teams that you're supporting, right? Quite often we see, our customers do really well with kind of adopting that framework as the, entry levels of the maturity, but then there will be a point in your journey as EAs where that's going to break and you have to be able to adapt to that situation. So frameworks are not dead. They're a phenomenal tool, but they're just so contextual to, the actual practice of architecture.
Yeah, and I'll play with this a little too before we go to James Warner's question. Again, just a reminder, use the chat. Let's find out what you guys want to chat about because we'll take this wherever you want to go. I think traditional EA frameworks, if you want to use an EA framework like a rule book and you want to be able to go deploy what the rule book says, that it is absolutely dead and it never was alive. Like that was a lie. That's never been the case. But if you're new to architecture and you want to understand like how conceptually to solve problems, a framework to start to think about them, and it might be helpful to think of them as the rule book and the only way to do things as you get started, coming from maybe a more black and white background, it's pretty helpful. But you quickly find out, right, that it's not so much the case. So I find that this is a wonderful way to take somebody who isn't used to solving problems in the architecture mindset way to develop that thinking in somebody. And much like you go to college, you learn a bunch of stuff and then you get into the real world and you try to apply it. So that's how I kind of think they still live. Pretty much it's the same problems we're solving today. We're just using different technology. We have a different pace. Our constraints are different. But we still really need to understand the problem we're solving first, right? Then we start to step into that business architecture of that challenge. What are the capabilities we're enabling? The information architecture. What are the key areas and information domains that need to be curated to solve that? The application architecture. How does this thing actually connect across the landscape? Do we already own stuff to solve it? Do we have a gap in that space? Are we using Excel? Yes to all the above. Okay, that's the usual answer. And then we go into the tech, right? And start to understand the plumbing. And now that's not the old plumbing of a 3-tiered architecture, but a lot of cloud and other enabling technologies. And then there's that whole rest of that wheel. So, I think that still is conceptually at the highest level how problems kind of move into our environments. Maybe they're iterative and you do multiple loops or loops within loops. But if you haven't had that learning around how to connect the problem into the technology, going back and getting some TOGAF training, I think it was Chris Armstrong that trained me years ago. He's still at it today. Great guy. That's a great place, especially for our teams that are newer to that space. So we'll go into another question too, but James Warner waits for no man. We have to go to him now. So his question is, do you see AI enabling shadow IT more and being a challenge for governance, the governance portion of EA? Brian, why don't you take this one first?
Yeah, I can start. So maybe it definitely somebody who you would categorize as shadow IT is probably, if they get their hands on AI tools, is probably going to be able to do things that a software engineer can do successfully sometimes in terms of how it looks and it works. They probably will not be able to do that from a security and deployment into real infrastructure and scaling it, to a production level. But I think it will definitely make that a challenge. So I think one really important thing to do is to have a strategy for how do you equip those people and kind of give them tools that are useful that help them do their jobs and get things done, or maybe build prototypes that then a software engineer can work with AI to productionize or different things like that. But how do you get them involved versus just putting them on the outside? Because if they're just on the outside, they're going to go do stuff, click through the legal agreement, pay on their credit card, and they're going to do stuff. So it does create a risk, but I think it can be easily mitigated by inviting them into the party, making them part of what's going on, and kind of helping them see where it's safe for them to operate and where them doing things creates business risk.
Awesome. Sundar, anything to add?
Yeah, so I agree, Brian. And it's you're not going to stop that from happening. So there will be the shadow IT, and you can make a case to say we should be encouraging it. Citizen development is a big feature where I work here, that we want people to capitalize on all the tools and technologies that they have. So it's exactly, I think, what you were saying, Brian, that you don't want to make them feel like they're being held back. You want to make them feel like they're being enabled. And that means, how can you make simple guidelines that they can follow and also illustrate the very real risks that are involved if they run a little too fast? And I think once you can educate them on why you have some of these cautions, they're more likely to adopt them. And the one thing you want is not to control them, but to have visibility into it. And certainly where I work, there's opportunities where you don't want redundant development. There's some groups that develop an agent and then it can be readily be used by somebody else. We want to start availing ourselves. Actually, very similar architecture principles to a much more traditional form of working.
Nice. We have 2 Chief Architect Network members in the chat, Madhu and Jeff. Thanks for joining, guys. It's awesome to see our friends out here. Chief Architect Network salute. So I'll jump to them in a minute. I'll add a little on this as well. So as our friends in London, a little shout out to Oliver Crunk, taught me, without some careful thought and some frameworks, AI can be the enshittification of IT, right? Brian, I think you remember when he dropped that one. We pretty much lost it. That was like the word of the trip after that, right? And then I was just at the Gartner Symposium and they used it. And I'm like, you stole that from Oliver Crunk. But it really can be, right? Because it's like the ungoverned nature of shadow IT, but so much faster, right? And we know vibe coding is like, Brian, you've been at this. I've been watching your like vibe coding journey and, like it's so fast, but also you figure out, wow, like you want to change something and the maintenance and enhancement and it becomes kind of a bear. It's almost like you get to 80% quick and getting to that last 20 can sometimes be a journey. So, and also the security of it, a lot of other challenges. So that's the challenge. Without some kind of guardrails, without some kind of governance, it can be a way for IT to get way worse, way quicker. So what I find is a bit of an innovation pipeline of the stuff that we're just experimenting with, do pilots, do POCs, encourage a lot of experimentation. And as it becomes, the RAG of tomorrow, there's only really just we can standardize our RAG approach, right? So I think, and as we start to move towards the agent, I'll probably find some platforms that allow us to create like user-created agents that are, English written, that follow a certain kind of framework and connect it with an ecosystem. There's a little less risk when we can kind of put some framework around it. I talk too much. Let's go to some of these fun questions. So Madhu shared that he uses it as a guideline versus a rule book. Every organization is different and needs to change and adapt. Totally agree with that. Like I mentioned as well, you really can't just put this stuff out there and expect it to be the answer. You've got to apply it in your organization. So spot on, Madhu. Jeff made a comment, when you put together a lot of the different technologies, cloud, hybrid infrastructures, AI, serverless, the traditional frameworks don't cover the new structures and deployments, but there's huge levels. But higher level concepts are still really applicable and useful. So totally agree with that. Jump in if you have anything else. So what I'd love to do is go to the second part of the headline, which is a question in itself. How is AI changing business and in turn changing EA? Who wants to take a run at that one first?
I think that one might be me, as someone who has also sold AI in addition to EA. I think I
Look at you go.
I think I might, unfortunately or fortunately, be well positioned to answer that. And I think the concept is both AI and EA want to accomplish the same thing, right? It's organizational efficiency, it's organizational optimization. It's, where can we really find this organizational alignment? AI, I feel, is a little bit more rooted in a business problem. So example, if you are a customer experience team and you want to, if you have a critical business challenge around your customer experience response times or your support response times, like AI is a very, very natural fit for that. And obviously there's a lot of governance that has to come from the EA side, but it's very, very solution based, whereas EA has been and way more theoretical for a long time. And so with AI really entering the picture, we kind of have to have that convergence point of what is practical from an outcome standpoint and what's practical from, our governance and our structure standpoint. So that's really where like a lot of that intersection is kind of coming into play.
Okay. I like that. Go ahead, jump in.
Yeah, go Sundar.
Yeah. So, I mean, one way it's affected us, for example, is that there are multiple AI solutions that you can go with. So we've actually had competing groups within IT offering solutions. So one might be to leverage COTS agents. So like Salesforce has a ton of these, SAP has agents, and then there's the homegrown variety as well. So we found an interesting conundrum that depending on which application delivery group, they had their own solution, and the various groups are starting to compete with each other. So we had to create a framework for how to get this collaboration in a way that provides the optimal value. So we kind of got focal points from people from the various groups, brought them together and say, we have to identify what the requirements really are and then determine what's the best solution at a number of levels. And we have a framework for that as well, so that the business people don't feel like they're being inundated by competing internal groups with varying solutions. So that's a different effect, I think, maybe unintended of AI for EA processes.
Yeah. And can I actually elaborate on that too? Yeah. Yeah. So I think you've brought up a really, really great point, Sundar, is exactly to your point about SAP has agents, Salesforce has agents. So many of these large companies that you have existing relationships with have these agents that solve similar problems. You, as an enterprise architect, also have to compete with their sales orgs that are doing EA type mapping, capabilities assessment as a part of their own sales process. And so it really means that the EA practice has to be able to meet the business where they are in terms of solution and viability and being able to make the best recommendation at a level that is on par with a really good sales team from a major multinational. So that is something we've been seeing a lot of from the customer side of things that I think is really important to flag.
I think that's a concern. Like if that's like trying to wrestle off your back. You're already lost, right? If your architecture practice is trying to compete with a sales team, that's backwards, right? That's a chicken chasing a fox. Like that just doesn't make any sense. I'm just crazy with metaphors. They don't even make sense half the time, but here they are. So now you're thinking about a chicken and a fox. It's in your head. Sorry. But the reality is like, architecture has a responsibility to be the ones that align technology for the enablement of an organization. And if they aren't empowered enough to be in the chair of solution selection and identifying overlaps and capability enablement approaches, then it's almost that kind of Lumbergh moment or the Bob's moment of Office Space. What would you say you do here? Right? Like you've got to be at least covering that landscape. So I would think that an organization in that situation, that EA leader should be pounding down their CIO's door and saying, the asylum is being run by the inmates. You got to help me take this back over. Let's get some control of this landscape. Certainly savvy salespeople are a good thing. Savvy consultants are a good thing. We should see them as assets and kind of the chess pieces we move across the board. So I just think that if you're thinking about that as someone you have to beat or win against, you've already lost. That's just my opinion. I'm curious, Sundar or Brian, how do you think about what was just shared? I mean, that's my reaction. Doesn't mean it's right. What do you guys think?
Yeah, go ahead, Sundar. I was going to chime in on something else.
Okay. So, getting the sort of credibility of EA is something that's, regardless of AI or anything else, is something that's foundational. That if you don't have the credibility, the influencing, that respect, as you say, Grant, you're really going to run a losing race. So part of it is, I think, that we have to. This applies to 20 years ago or now. That if we're not seen as partners, enablers, that's our first step to be value added compatriots there. And certainly the idea shouldn't be that we're competing with any sales folks.
Yeah, I was going to chime in.
Where you were going.
Yeah, your original question, Grant, about how is AI changing business, maybe how to think about that. So I kind of think of it a little bit as a spectrum. So kind of starting out, I think there's opportunities to think about how AI augments roles. Like really, it could be really simple things like maybe a deep research type thing really helps a certain type of person get their work done in a much more efficient manner, or it eliminates the need for like a big consulting engagement. Then there's sort of like a next stage, which is role transformation, which is what I think is happening to software engineering right now. It doesn't mean no software engineers. It just means software engineers are working differently than they have in the past, and maybe spending more time on different parts of the software lifecycle than they used to. And that's just an example. That could happen in finance or accounting or whatever as well, or supply chain. And then you've got sort of like role automation, which I think is what everybody wants to jump right to. And it's like we're gonna lay off thousands of people and save a huge amount of money because AI, and you can't just jump there. And a lot of times it's not even
AI.
Yeah. You can't jump there, and sometimes that's not even possible at all, and it's just not going to work. And so I think it's like embracing that spectrum and starting with augmentation, looking for opportunities to transform as the tooling in the industry really allow it, and not worrying or stressing about trying to go too far ahead because of hype. And then there's going to be rare places where complete automation really works. And you can go there when the time's right, but it also requires more maturity to get there. So I think that spectrum is sort of how it's actually practically really changing some businesses. But I think a lot of businesses aren't being changed by it because they're just trying to jump to the end and it doesn't work. So that didn't talk about the EA part, but just in terms of what I think about as I look around, that's kind of my framework I'm using right now.
And
I love it. Go ahead, Sundar.
Just one more comment about this, that there's some things that don't change. Like the number of times I've seen struggles with AI because the underlying data is not normalized. We don't have clean data. It's not based on a common master data set. So you feed it garbage and you're going to get a bunch of things that don't make sense. So a lot of the principles of sound architecture still apply and perhaps are even more impactful in the AI context.
I dropped some soap in the chat to help out with that dirty data of yours. So, one of the things I'll chime in on, it's actually kind of fun. I get to play back a panel that Patrick Engelking, Rabneet at he's at, I'll think of the name in a minute, Rabneet at Evelynth, and Adi, who's at Ecolab with me. We all go on a panel on how are trends influencing strategy. Right? Because you usually think, well, no, your strategy leverages trends. But it's actually interesting because when you think about when the automobile came out, well, your strategy of like how you're going to improve your like horseshoe or your feed delivery for people's horses now needs to be your mechanic strategy and how am I going to put how am I going to build better tires for cars, right? So it does actually work the other way. So I think that's a really interesting challenge where AI is now a vector that we have to consider, and in many cases, a competitive advantage. So as we think about how our company, you still start with strategy and decompose that to the capability areas, and then where AI might be able to help in that particular capability, that's an interesting component. And then you might actually change your go-to-market because now that might be a differentiator that we can auto-detect this for our customer or tune for that or automate the edge of our processes and deploy a reasoning agent that can kind of take the same human empathy that we expect to apply with artificial empathy and be able to service a higher volume of engagement from customers in a way that wouldn't be scalable with humans. So those kinds of moments are things where I think we have to adapt our architecture approach to do it both ways, right? To talk about how AI can enable the business strategy and how the approach might need to evolve based on what we're seeing and where we might recommend components we're building for other parts of the business. Hey, you can use this as well and try to create sort of that interconnected ecosystem for the future. I learned a lot actually just sitting with my peers chatting through that. Very good. We got a few things in the chat that just came up. Let's pivot over to there just to kind of comment, see where else we're going here. So Madhu shared, we always thought of centralizing searches, knowledge base. or a single user interface for employees to consume. What are you guys' thoughts of application-specific AI-enabled chatbots or broader knowledge-based search versus centralized knowledge-based models? Companies ended up using them. Companies end up using them as they are paid. Thoughts? So, like, one of the things I'll share on this, and I'd be very curious what you folks think too, is a lot of folks today are taking a platform strategy of, if it's in the platform and AI is offered as a part of that product, use it, right? But if you want to go cross-platform, much like we have with our data, our enterprise data environments, right? We want to see cross-domain coming through a center of excellence and getting deployed with common technology. You don't want to have each of these ecosystems start to expand across, because you end up with a mess of, is this getting led by the Salesforce agents or the SAP agents or the Microsoft agents? And you sort of want to pick where the cross-domain stuff is going to play, so you don't end up with the equivalent of like 16 different data cores in your environment. So I'm curious, Sundar, Brian, Christine as well. Is that a topic that's resonating for you, and how does that kind of land in your environments?
That's exactly our principle, Grant. If the functionality and the data are within an application and it has native functionality, that's what we go with. I think there's, as you say, when there's kind of cross-domain functionality, there's it's a little bit more difficult to make it work, it seems, because inter-agent communication isn't like fully developed, I think, at this point, and it's harder to make it all work in a way that's effective. But that is the principle that absolutely go with.
Brian, is that what you do at Chick-Fil-A, or go ahead, Christine?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll chime in with one of my friends. He works for an investment bank, and he's in the process of like setting up cross-functional AI for his analyst team. And he's been asking me a lot of questions about it. And he's like, "Oh, are your customers doing this? How are they doing it?" And I essentially said, you need to write your own LLM or adapt one that exists, which is just not even super feasible in and of itself. However, to get the outcome, that is what has to happen in terms of a cross-functional play. But exactly to what you all have said, if there is a tool that has it natively, like, that is absolutely the default. The second half, it's once we go cross-functional, it's a different and much larger scope conversation.
Awesome. Brian, anything to add?
Are you on mute, Brian?
I was, yeah. I said I'm good. I don't have anything unique to add there. I think you guys covered it really well.
I'm eager to answer Brian's own question.
Let's go there. But first, we have yet another Chief Architect Network member. Tejas has asked, EA team, or maybe commented, EA team can also bring additional innovative ideas to the table by partnering with vendors, EA sales team. They can get additional insights on where the industry is heading and so forth. Totally agree with you. I think that's one of the key values we can add. And I'm honestly getting invited to a lot more reimagination conversations, which I consider the top of the Maslow's hierarchy of architecture, right? It's in my little dorky pyramid in 2018. Ecker's hierarchy of architecture, right? The top is innovation, where you get invited to business model evolution, not just strategy. So I think that moment is really here for us, and it's a really fun time to be in IT, especially in EA. So let's go to Brian's question. And Brian, why don't you ask it?
What question did I ask?
Put it in the chat.
We're talking about.
You put it in the chat here, so I'll read it to you. In our EA team, we're in an augmentation stage for ourselves. How does AI help EA work better?
That question, sure. Yeah, that's kind of I think that's a question we're asking ourselves right now, which is how does AI help EA work, better and differently? So I think there's some interesting ways that it can, for sure. Like, one of the things that I've always felt like EA could do for the organization is help bring context to situations. And you could think about the fact that a lot of organizations, context is very highly distributed, both in people, but documents in random places in different systems. So I think there's an opportunity for AI to do what it's good at and help create shared context more quickly about different kinds of situations. I already mentioned like a deep research, but I think if you're evaluating, a vendor or a new capability for your business, like a technical capability or something, perhaps, or a business one, you want to look at robotics, or you're looking at something in, the IT OT world. Deep research that stuff and save yourself a huge engagement and a lot of time, and ask your question and get a nice report that you can read in a few minutes and digest quickly. So I think you can go on and on in those areas. I find myself using just chat experiences to think through things a lot. That's super helpful, and so that's maybe the easiest thing to do. But on the other end of the spectrum, even having agents that help EA do certain things like review inbound projects. And we've talked about, reading, if people want to check for technical standards as they work on a project or finish a project, being able to upload their repositories, and we auto check them for, organizational standards, different things like that. So I think there's a whole realm of things that, depending on what part of your practice you're in, whether it's more of a business architecture side or more of an influence side, or maybe you're a technical architecture practice, or both, I think there's a lot of opportunities like that that exist. So what do you guys think? What are you seeing?
I just want to make a plug, since we got a lot of members on the phone. Check out Geeta's video from Dallas. She did some really cool things with her repository, and it'll work in a lot of different tools. It's not just the one she used. It's actually just the thinking of how can I use AI enablement as a bridge to close out technical debt with tool repositories as one of the databases to create a list of tech debt you share up to the board level. So she's done a lot of AI enablement in her approach, and it's pretty cool. Sundar, jump in. Sorry, man.
Yeah, that's the good plug there, Grant. So I was thinking of two use cases of where AI can help EA, and Brian beat me to the punch and said one of them, which is that to streamline the review process. That if you can look at what the proposed design is and then compare that to what your accepted standards are and come up with an exception list, just makes the whole process a lot faster and easier. The other thing that I wanted to say is that what we want to do is encourage people to use existing solutions in-house. And we want them to be thinking not about requesting software, but about stating business problems. So here's an example where AI can help. You have some kind of portal or an agent that they can type in what their business problem is. It compares that to the business capability model and brings some structure using the taxonomy. Compare that to the catalog of standard offerings that you have for those capabilities, and it can come back and say, you should use X and call person Y. And I think they feel the service aspect of that, I think they appreciate that they're just stating in English what their problem is, and it comes back with here's what you're supposed to do for that. And that's quite improves that perception of IT and EA.
Now, if you want to, again, if you're part of the group, and if you're not, join us. If you're a chief architect, have 10 or more people in your team, or manage about $1 billion in scope, jump in, chiefarchitectnetwork.com. Matt, the Instigator Jones, he's at Fitch Group, came up with an idea of how is AI enabling our EA practices. And he did a talk about exactly what Sundar just mentioned, architecture review boards and how that works. That's a replay available for anyone that might want to watch it, or reach out to him. He'll share what he's doing there. I want to jump to a tough question that's in the chat here from Marina. It touches on the optimistic expectations of AI replacing people. I just want to we got to talk about this stuff, right? So here's the thing. Like we just talked about the horse economy of the past, right? There's a past when in 1900, there's a picture of Fifth Avenue in New York where every car on the road was a horse and buggy except for one car. 13 years later, the same picture has one buggy and the rest are cars. So we're not helping people if we don't teach them how to engage in the new economy. If you stick with making horseshoes, there's not a job for you 13 years later. So we got to make sure we get our people ready to stop delivering horse feed and start building gas stations, and et cetera, right? So I think that's a really important thing. And an example is there's some areas where it is absolutely possible. We do not need humans doing three-way matching, a fuzzy matching of invoices. We don't. That's something an LLM is perfectly tuned to do. It's going to be deployed across our industry. And if your job is to day in, day out, look for where the miskey on an invoice, let's find some better work for you. And I think it's very important that we take the labor that moves from those problems and find the next level of problems we're not solving well and redeploy that talent. So if we think that it's just an impossibility that AI is going to impact our workforce, I think we're being naive. I think it's very much going to impact our workforce, just like horses and automobiles. We have to be thinking about preparing people for the future. Curious, does that strike a chord for any of you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think even from the sales perspective of it, I read an article every day that's like, salespeople will be people of the past. And the answer is like, so much of, the day to day can absolutely be automated. And I think to your point, Grant, it's less about fearing the technology and more about using it to rescope your work and add value differently. And that applies no matter what your domain is in. Something that we've been seeing with our customer accounts is how can enterprise architectures address that fear and help kind of, shape where it makes sense and where there could be that higher probability of changing the human capital and the human resourcing there, but also kind of pushing it, upskilling the team in terms of what's next. So if this is automated, what will you do differently to deliver more value or different value to the business?
I want to play a game. You guys up for it?
Sure.
Lightning
Well,
round.
that depends.
Except I'm not going to make it all up. So you're going to think of a lightning round question to give to someone else, and I'm going to offer the first lightning round question. Okay? So then whoever wants to pick it up has to pick up the next one and then assign it to someone else, or just who else wants to pick it up. So AI is going to be the topic for mine. And the question is, citizen development, yes or no? And why? Lightning round, quick answer. Who wants to take it?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So you can't stop it. You might as well embrace it. And let's just try to provide enough education and guardrails so that they get the most value and minimize the risk.
What's the next question?
This question is to Brian. Brian, can you do the robot dance as well as the Grant?
That was not one of my business capabilities. So I'm not able. I need training or retraining. I was going to ask you, Sundar. I was going to ask you if traditional enterprise architecture methodologies are dead or not. So you you stole my opportunity.
No, actually, Brian, I do have a question for you about you, more than most people I know, really keep up with technology as it unfolds, almost like on a daily, weekly basis. What's the secret to that?
I think reading and trying. Just reading Ivory Tower Danger for Architects, trying takes time. You don't have to build production systems, but if you never do anything with the stuff, you aren't going to know how it really works. So I think reading and trying and being willing to devote time to it is what I would say. That's what I do. Another question. Man, if you have one already, Christine, go for it. I have to think.
Turtle or rabbit?
Turtle
or rabbit? Go.
Rabbit.
Turtle.
Okay, tell me why turtle.
Because I think they're cute. Well, rabbits are cute too, but I don't know. I think turtles are like, they kind of just do their own thing. And you don't really see them until you see them, but they are an important part of every ecosystem. And they don't have as much prominence as a rabbit. And so I think that that's important to have high visibility and low visibility, but the low visibility is sometimes more important.
All right, Grant, AI. Go ahead. AI, overhyped, underhyped, or just right?
Let me nuance that. Just right in the things that are actually AI, but way overhyped because you have to take the agentic test. And this is from Mike Carroll. I was just hanging out with him this week at this event. So it's not, you got to give things this test. Is it an agent? It needs to learn, it needs to act, and it needs to do that action aligned with purpose, which means it's explainable. If it doesn't do those three things, It's not passing the Jeff Foxworthy test of being an agent. So that's kind of how I would go backwards. And he's got a whole test on AI too. If you follow Mike Carroll, about a month ago, he posted this great thing. I actually reposted it today. It's awesome. So give things the agentic test. And if they're passing, it's amazing. Mike Carroll at Georgia Pacific with Tony Huffman and Ron Norris were able to do some amazing things where they were optimizing their supply chain with causal AI, where, let me just give you a second on this. So it figures out the context, the ontological and the semantic layer, right? Of like what things mean in your organization. The cognitive layer of how to actually think and reason and be able to come up with suggestions and hypotheses against that. The autonomous layer to be able to go, okay, based on those things, what's the right decision? That's a next best action. And then you might even get to the emergent layer where it's not just solving an individual problem, it's solving system level problems and answering questions that we didn't even think of when we wrote the thing, right? So that's kind of the progression. So with that in mind, they were able to take that and kind of point the early phase of that 2 years ago to their order management system and be able to have it say, okay, these are the rules. We never pay a late fee. We get stuff on time to customers no matter what, even if it's inefficient, on and on and on. So the AI can actually start to go, hey, one of the decisions it can make is, do I want to break a rule and can I ask a human if I can do that? So, hey, Grant, in filling the order trucks this week, if I get one case of Dixie Cups to a customer 1 day late, it'll cost me $75 on a late fee, which we don't agree to paying, but it'll move my fill rate from 90% to 99%. That's not overhyped. That's legit amazing innovation. But the problem is it's surrounded by a million things that can't pass the agentic test. So I think it's not overhyped, but it's misapplied and it's used as a marketing term to AI wash the world. And that is a mess. What do you think, Sundar? Hyped or overhyped or not?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Greg, because I've seen enough attempts tried and failed, because it's all of the basics are not done. What is the business problem you're trying to solve? What's the underlying data that's required to make educated decisions? What's the process that you want to use, and what's the role of humans versus the role of AI? A lot of these things are just good practices for any kind of solution development, and if they're not done, AI isn't going to fix them for you. But if those things are done, AI is quite an enabler in terms of a catalyst expediting the speed at which you could deploy it. So I agree.
Awesome. I would like everyone to channel their inner turtle, slow down, and think about this one thoughtfully. This is a good question for us to close on, so I think we wrap right at 4. What are the parts or responsibilities in EA that cannot be automated? Where do we need to keep that human perspective? And let's make this our kind of wrapping comment. So, Sundar, would you start us off?
Yeah. So, there was someone answered. Oh, it was Brian that's talking about influence. That all major decisions in life have to do with people communicating with people, and EA's one of the biggest values and skills that make them effective is being a mediator and a connector and bringing people together. So those things AI isn't going to do for you, and using some judgment about are some of the tests that you talked about, agentic tests and some other things. I've talked about a few things that are good principles. Are these things being followed before we try to jump ahead with the technology? There's a lot there in terms of relationships and judgment that can't be replaced by a machine.
If I could pile on to that, the important thing there is trust, right? So people do things that when you ask them to do something, they do those things often because they trust you. They think you have their best interest in mind and you're going to help them, be successful in what they're trying to do. And I always say about enterprise architecture in our team, like just being right isn't enough. If you just imagine the Slack bot that tells the executive person what to do, they don't trust that. It's just information, even if it's right. So you can't just be right. You also have to do influence, which is based on trust. And AI doesn't build real trust right now. And I don't think it's going to. So I think that's one of the things that just can't change. It isn't going to go away. You're still going to need to earn trust. Maybe AI can help you execute to build that trust, but you're going to have to earn it, and you're going to have to use it to influence and help the organization get to the right place.
Christine, what's your inner turtle tell us?
Third one, with a similar sentiment. I mean, every decision is some combination of logic and emotion. And spoiler alert, emotion is a really prominent driving force in decision making. If there is somebody who feels very, very strongly about a particular solution or usage of AI or this, that, or the other, and they're in the position to tell you no, and it will be taken as an actual response, you're going to have a lot of challenges with that. And that is what AI is never going to be able to fully automate, because it's so easy to read a body of text and say, I disagree with that. It's way harder to say that to a person you like, trust, and respect.
Awesome. Let's leave everybody with the robot. Come on, robot with me, everybody. Let's go. We're going to join Patrick over in the, we're going to join Philip over in the closing comments. The last thing I'll leave you with, everything there on the people side, spot on. Also, all that agentic stuff I talked about, designing the context, teaching the agent how to think, teaching it how to reason and decide what the right answer is, and thinking about system level. That's the 3D work we have to do next. And that, we are the architects of those future solutions. So we'll be solving those problems, how to make an agent act with our empathy on our edge. Thanks for being with us today. Thank you to Philip Bell for building this amazing platform we all get to hang out in and connect and share. And it's awesome, right? So Let's go hear what he has to say and celebrate another great conference together. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.